A few days before the biggest World Cup in football history, something extraordinary is happening. Not on the pitch. Six of Europe's most influential football nations are openly questioning the tournament. Fans are refusing to buy tickets. Politicians are debating whether football has become entangled with international politics. Some supporters who dreamed of attending the World Cup for years are now choosing to stay home. FIA spent a decade building this tournament. 48 teams, 104 matches, 3 host countries, the most ambitious football project ever attempted. But as kickoff approaches, the conversation is no longer about tactics, star players, or who might lift the trophy. Instead, it is about power, money, borders, and whether football's governing body has finally pushed too far. Because World Cup 2026 was designed to unite the football world, yet, just days before it begins, parts of that world are pushing back. That was always the dream. But bigger isn't always better. When FIFA announced the expansion of the World Cup from 32 teams to 48, the decision was presented as a celebration of global football. More countries would qualify, more players would experience the biggest stage in sport, more regions would finally feel represented. And in many ways, that vision was attractive. But every expansion creates consequences. More teams mean more matches mean more travel means more logistical complexity. World Cup 2026 stretches across an entire continent, from Vancouver in Canada to Mexico City in Mexico. From Seattle to Miami, from Toronto to Dallas, the distances involved are unlike anything football has ever attempted. Players will spend thousands of miles in transit. Supporters will cross multiple borders. National teams will face travel demands that previous generations never had to consider. FIFA saw opportunity. Critics saw risk. And as the tournament approached, those risks started becoming very real. Then football collided with geopolitics. For decades, FIFA promoted the idea that football could rise above politics. But World Cup 2026 is exposing how difficult that promise can be. In reality, international travel restrictions, diplomatic tensions, visa requirements, and security concerns suddenly became part of the football conversation. Certain nations faced uncertainty over how supporters, staff, and even officials would enter host countries. Governments became involved. Diplomatic channels became active. Questions that had nothing to do with tactics or talent suddenly mattered. In previous World Cups, the biggest concerns were injuries or difficult group draws. This time, some football federations found themselves discussing border procedures and international regulations. The situation created an uncomfortable reality. The world's biggest football tournament was increasingly dependent on political decisions beyond FIFA's control. And every new headline reinforced the concern that many supporters already felt. Football may be global, but borders still exist. And then the criticism started spreading across Europe. Frustration began emerging from multiple directions at once. Supporters questioned travel costs. Football executives questioned FIFA's decision-making. Politicians debated whether football was becoming entangled in larger geopolitical disputes. What made the situation significant wasn't any single complaint. It was the accumulation of many different concerns arriving. At the same time, in some countries, public petitions gained attention. In others, football officials openly discussed concerns about the tournament's direction. Former administrators, commentators, and football figures began asking uncomfortable questions. Had FIFA become too powerful? Was commercial growth taking priority over supporter experience? Were football decisions increasingly being made without meaningful consultation from the communities that sustain the game? These questions did not create an actual boycott, but they created something FIFA rarely faces: organized skepticism from within football's traditional power base. But then something happened that FIFA couldn't easily control. Fans may not control FIFA. They may not influence diplomatic negotiations. They may not decide tournament regulations, but they control one thing: their money. As ticket packages, flights, hotels, and transportation costs continued climbing, many supporters began reconsidering their plans. For years, attending a World Cup represented a once-in-a-lifetime dream. But for many ordinary fans, the financial reality of World Cup 2026 felt increasingly difficult to justify. Long-distance flights, expensive accommodation, dynamic ticket pricing, additional travel between host cities, the costs added up quickly. Suddenly, some supporters faced a difficult question. Was this still a tournament built for football fans, or had it become a tournament built for corporate customers? Markets began responding. Resale prices fluctuated. Travel forecasts became less optimistic than expected. Hospitality sectors in several host cities adjusted projections. None of this threatened the tournament itself, but it revealed a growing disconnect between football's governing institutions and the people who actually fill stadiums. But declining enthusiasm wasn't the only warning sign. As the countdown to kickoff continued, FIFA found itself facing a problem that no amount of marketing could completely solve. Expectations and reality were starting to drift apart. For years, World Cup organizers had promoted the tournament as a guaranteed economic success story. Cities invested in infrastructure, hotels, expanded capacity. Local businesses prepared for a wave of international visitors. Many expected a football boom unlike anything North America had ever experienced. But as the final weeks approached, some of those projections suddenly looked less certain. Travel companies reported softer demand from several international markets. Hospitality operators began revising expectations. Ticket resale markets behaved very differently from what many speculators had anticipated. None of these developments represented a crisis, yet together they created an uncomfortable question. Had FIFA overestimated how much fans were willing to spend? The modern World Cup has become more than a sporting event. It is a massive commercial operation involving governments, airlines, broadcasters, sponsors, tourism industries, and global brands. That scale creates opportunities, but it also creates pressure. Every stakeholder expects growth. Every tournament is expected to be bigger than the last. And that expectation can become dangerous because eventually there comes a point where expansion stops feeling exciting and tot starts feeling expensive. For many supporters, World Cup 2026 may become the first tournament where the dream of attending collides directly with economic reality. And that reality is forcing football to confront a difficult question. Who is the World Cup really being built for? And yet, despite everything, football remains football. Because once the ball starts rolling, much of the noise will disappear. France arrives with one of the strongest squads in world football. Argentina enters as defending champions with Lionel Messi potentially playing his final World Cup. Brazil returns with another generation of extraordinary talent. England believes its wait for glory could finally end. Spain arrives with young stars ready to take center stage. Norway brings Erling Haaland to its first World Cup stage. Across 104 matches, stories will emerge that nobody can predict. Heroes will be created. Dreams will collapse. Entire nations will celebrate and suffer together. This remains the unique power of football. No matter how intense the controversies become, the game itself still has the ability to capture global attention unlike anything else. And FIFA knows that, because ultimately the greatest protection FIFA possesses is not politics, money, or power. It's football itself. A few days before kickoff, World Cup 2026 remains the biggest football event ever created. The crowds will arrive, the goals will be scored, new heroes will emerge, yet beneath the excitement, another contest is unfolding. Not on the pitch. In government offices, football federations, legal institutions, and boardrooms across the football world. FIFA's authority is not collapsing, but perhaps for the first time in years, it is being questioned by voices powerful enough to matter. The outcome will not be decided in 90 minutes. It may not even be decided this summer. But long after the final whistle in New Jersey, the debate over football's future will continue. And the decisions made after this tournament could shape the game for an entire generation.